To the Battleship edition of this evening's stream. Today we're going to be playing the Tureen. It's a tier 3 battleship. I got the special captain from one of the events that has improved adrenaline rush and improved expert marksman. I chose to put that on the battleships because I think expert marksman is very, very important for battleships. And adrenaline rush can also benefit them a lot because they have so much health that the percentage of health missing and also such long reload times on their guns can really synergize well. So we're just going to be grinding up the French battleship line. Might play some German battleships as well, or even some, you know, could play all the battleships really. I don't have the British battleship yet. I also don't really know or understand their gameplay style that well. I've been trying to research what I can and get some YouTube videos from Jingles, Notzer, or Flamu on various tactics to use with the French or British battleship lines. I gather British battleships can be very good for loading HE and setting fires. I think the most important thing about playing a battleship is understanding its armor design and philosophy, and then being able to employ that armor effectively. Of course, angling is very important for all the World of Warships and World of Tanks games. You know. And battleships are able to do that. They're one of the, kind of the tanks of the game. Divisions. Looks like we have a nice division there. Looks like we have 2 aircraft carriers again, so that'll be fun. Not sure if that the AA capabilities are that stout on the French battleships. Traditionally, battleships have the most surface area available for anti-aircraft fire, but they also need it the most because they're the biggest targets. I think that those little guns are the only ones that we have available. Just on the top there. They're kind of added as one of the reworks, or one of the other upgrades available, not the starting one. Yep, very short. Very short AA range, so it's just for personal defense. Probably not going to be able to contribute that much to anyone else's success. So our best bet is just stick together, especially against this upcoming Hocho. Looks like they're going after the Charleston. It's kind of alone. We could go after to help him out as much as we can. It's kind of anachronistic that aircraft carriers at this time period had rockets that were as numerous and accurate as that, I believe. The rocketry design didn't get really good until the later parts of the war. I know they used to great effect on the Corsair F4U. So we're loaded AP. We're gonna pop out from behind this island. Hopefully this V-170, which is a beautiful looking ship, can scout for us. South Carolina on the other side, Clemson on the other side. So we don't want to get torpedoed by that Clemson, so let's give ourselves just a little more space. We could also switch to HE. "7 seconds out. send a salvo over to that South Carolina and see how it does. Oh, looks like it's a little ahead of the target. Oh, this Kohlberg is a much better target. Oh, and we have some incoming torpedoes. Range is not quite right. 6 seconds we'll be able to target the Kohlberg. And we are under torpedo attack. Looks like we've got 2 over penetrations. Gonna have to aim a little more to the left. Suffer 1 extra aerial torpedo. Don't really have the maneuverability to avoid aerial torpedoes. I did try to balance them so that they do less damage. And we do have a heal, so we might as well use it. That's one of the reasons that low tier aircraft carrier gameplay is very, very strong. Friendlies are enjoying a smoke screen. And I did miss all of our shots on the Jersey. And another smoke screen. Oh, not a lot we can do at this point, except play defensive. Maximize our health and trying to get away. They have captured A pretty convincingly. They have 2 destroyers on this side, 1 cruiser, 2 cruisers, and a South Carolina. So South Carolina is probably our best target. South Carolina doesn't look like it's moving. And we have hit the border here. The Hosho is coming in to drop torpedoes on us. I'm just going to try to make ourselves a narrow target. And move away from this. We might be able to get out. Yes, we do. Hopefully because of our low speed, we'll just slam on the brakes here. We might be able to let that torpedo pass, yep, over our bow. We're going to probably turn it into this Jersey. Oh, wow, we missed. Unlucky. There we get it. Jersey does have quite a few torpedoes in the water. We'll be taking all of those. Oh! Hit away again. Oof. Wow, I did not have any captains for the British battleships. That is deeply unfortunate. Okay, well, I suppose just preventive maintenance. Having a tankier battleship is always good. Tureen is back. Yep, it is maxed out. Alright, let's jump in that terrain again and see if we can get some better games. At such low levels, we probably don't need to equip any flags or camo. It's not like we're playing for a lot of marbles at this particular level of play. The triangle flags, other than coolness, why they're shaped as triangles, it's for long-range semaphore identification. Flags shape allows them to have differentiation and a greater identification distance, and those were used all the way up until World War I and World War II, when different levels of light signaling or Morse became used. Although, I think even up until the 80s, semaphore was still taught in American naval academies, just in case there's an EMP blast or there were, disruptions to communications. You can only communicate visually on ship to ship. So much of a ship's communication has to be done while moving, and sending, it's been a problem for ships to communicate with one another in increasingly complex ways throughout all of naval history. How does a ship over here talk to a ship over there? Like, it's pretty far away. You can see it, but a lot of times being able to see it and identify it correctly is very difficult. Like the top flag here, is that a yellow triangle on top with black on left and right and red on the bottom, or is it some other combination? So there's a limited amount of signaling you can do. This is relatively close, 5 kilometers. So being within signal range is one of the communication errors attributed to Dunkirk. Or, sorry, not Dunkirk. What's the... Jutland, the Battle of Jutland. One of the most famous naval engagements of World War I. Partially because it was one of the most significant and decisive, because countries did not want to risk their most expensive battleships by going toe-to-toe with each other in a high-stakes duel. High-stakes, high-risk, high-reward situation. Could potentially end up crippling for either country. Having a battleship strategically or theoretically available to go to every place on your coast was often more valuable than risking it in just one engagement and then giving up, the safety of your merchant raiders or your coastline for the entire rest of the war. Alright, so we're lining up this Chester here, 6.8 kilometers. This map allows... Oh, there's a collision. Ah. I guess that's old Greek or Hellenic naval combat for you. Just ramming the enemy ship. Yeah, it's often kind of ironic that battleships are so expensive and so massive and so feared, but they're so valuable that you can't, or it's hard to deploy them in dangerous areas where they're really needed the most. So they just kind of exist on a map to deter the enemy from taking certain dangerous actions. Because you're like, I have a battleship, I can sink a bunch of your cruisers, a bunch of your transport ships. That's also one of the great triumphs of the submarine, as the submarine was inexpensive enough to be used and deployed in very dangerous situations with the expectation that it would get out and be safe, especially during World War II. So they were able to sink a large tonnage of merchant vessels. But much of the thinking strategically was wrapped up in finding and seeking the surface fleet of Germany, their battle cruisers and battleships, and fast commerce raider cruisers. Partially because those are, at least you can find those and lock them up in certain areas and locations. Alright. Looks like we're getting hits on the St. Louis, but we really need a citadel if we want to be the most effective. We can kind of bully him because he's at low health and we're at high health. He's kind of in a bad position, and we can potentially angle ourselves against this Bellerophon who put himself way on the outside of the map. Let's get at the waterline. Citadels for ships are at the waterline. Yep, there we go. We got a citadel. No, that's a little low, but hopefully dispersion will help us. Nope, one went over, one went under. That's called bracketing the ship. Bracketing the ship, which means part of your aim, due to dispersion, was on either side of where you want it to be. So it's generally considered a mark of good, but unlucky aiming if your targets go above and under the target. Ineffective. Okay, so let's focus on the Bellerophon. One of the good ideas about the turret structure of World War I battleships is having two turrets on either side, which is a design that was very quickly removed from the consciousness of naval strategic planners, because it is a huge amount of weight that is only being used half the time. Ideally. I think that a lot of this thinking comes from Admiral Nelson's strategy of cutting the French ships of the line by, I guess this statement requires you to understand 1800s and 1700s naval tactics. Were about creating ships of the line that would turn broadside to the enemy, because that's the most surface area you can bring to bear for guns, and blasting away, trying to do damage to the enemy faster than the enemy could do damage to you. And Admiral Nelson had the idea of cutting the French line that's lined up alongside here by going straight at them with their bow and tanking or blocking a lot of the shots. This Bellerophon will be dead before we get to it. By having the shots bounce off of the narrow prow or just miss to the side, and then getting at point blank range and shooting both sides of the ship into the rear section, the weak rear section of the enemy, and the weaker nose section of the enemy. Weaker because you can't put that many guns on the nose, forward-facing or rear-facing. And I don't know if World War I or late 1800s shipwright designers believed that that would be a tactic in use, or potentially having a nose and two of the front turrets able, so that you can kind of wiggle to either side to use each side's guns. And certainly a tactic in World of Warships. I'm not sure how well it was used. A lot of my readings of Jutland were, you know, kind of benefited the design that eventually came to replace this turret arrangement, which is you get in range, you put your ship sideways, and one of the reasons you do that is because the viewing ports for range finding need to be in a specific arrangement so that you can get good bearings or accurate readings on the distance, direction, speed. Oh, yeah, good hit on the citadel there. And one of the best ways to do that is put your ship exactly sideways so there's the most distance between viewing locations. And the more distance between viewing locations on the ship, the more accurate your range finding will be, due to the way that they understand and calculate range by measuring the angle difference of an image that is taken from two different places. It's an old surveying trick. Yeah, a lot of those observation officers or range finding officers for World War I, you know, were still being used in World War II before the advent of radar guided direction and range finders. Going into smoke is probably a bad idea for me because these torpedoes, yep, I expected torpedoes, but at this point making myself as narrow a target as possible is probably going to help me out the most. As narrow a target as possible and altering my speed and direction. That's really, if you're ever in warfare, and if you're ever in naval combat warfare from 1939, you're going to want to change your speed and your direction. Activate torpedoes. It's true. Oh, this Umikaze is coming around. At this time period, our secondaries have very bad range, so, you know, I think it's 3 kilometers of range. I'm not 100% sure how accurate that is to the time period, but it's very difficult for us to use that. And in a lot of ways, this is the kind of the heyday of those World War I. Oh, that was terrible. Our targets hit that island. This is kind of the heyday of the World War I torpedo boat destroyers finally coming into their own as torpedo boats in their own right. We're gonna switch to HE here. Mostly because this next salvo I don't think will kill if we have AP. So that, I think, was a torpedo run. He just gave us full broadside and is now turning away. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were a bunch of torpedoes in the water going over here on our port side. Oh, yep, and here we go. That's exactly where they were. See, destroyers have their own little language. And if you play a lot of destroyers, you'll begin to understand how to fight them as battleships. This one is coming a little close to us. He probably has another set because the reload speed on torpedoes is really low. Yep, I'm just going to turn towards them. It's like a little dance, like a beautiful dance. And I'm just going to slam on the brakes here. Oh, brakes were a wrong choice. I don't know why he sounded that way. It's very difficult. So yeah, I really enjoy the dance of destroyers and battleships in this game. I play both. Yep, looks like we have 4 kills. It's a pretty good match for us. 2 citadels. That Carolina's all the way over there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him. I don't want to sail all the way around this island. It's the last one left. We're probably going to win before I get in range of this Carolina. Might as well try, though. At this range, using AP will create plunging fire, which is a phenomenon of ranged propulsive fire where they get to the target and then turn into what the Japanese call diving shells. Or actually, that's not entirely accurate. Japanese diving shells are designed to go underwater and open up holes under the waterline of battleships. But we're in a French World War I era battleship right now, so we're just going to put that shell out as far as it'll go and then hope that it runs out of energy right when it gets to the target and just dips into the hull, the top hull. So if you look at the battleship, the armor on the top is way, way, way less than the belt armor. I can't get it. Belt armor, which is like right here in the middle of the ship, because they expected the most danger of shells to be close range, going straight through the ship. That's where you need the most armor. And in practice, you're usually at mid-range, and the shell comes in at kind of an oblique diagonal angle, and you can increase that by angling this direction as well. So you get horizontal and vertical angling of the armor, magnifying its effective armor, or the armor that the shell experiences, immensely. In practice, what typically took out ships? Air to ship or ship to ship? Depends on which time period you're talking about. For a lot of before airplanes were good, arguably even at the beginning of World War II, airplanes were not that effective. And it was largely ship-to-ship weaponry that was able to destroy naval engagements. To be honest, I have a hard time finding accounts of navies engaging in surface ship-to-ship combat with each other that is in any way like fair or kind of equal numbers against equal numbers, because a lot of naval combat is won on the operational strategic level well before it gets to the tactical level through positioning and resource allocation in certain theaters of combat. So, a lot of what will win a naval engagement is, kind of 15 on 3, weight of arms, and then you just close with all of your ships to, effectively point blank range if you're faster than them, and you just pummel them with huge amounts of shells until they go down or sink. We recently watched Finding the Bismarck, or Sinking the Bismarck, which is a great British movie made after the war. Damage control party might actually be useful. I'm loath to spend this much money on low tiers, but it might be good for us. And we're almost out of tier 3. We're almost getting the Colbert with Stephen Colbert. The first Dreadnought battleship built in France. Oh, France. The ship carried 12 305mm main guns and powerful secondary guns. Let's see, we have 305 guns here. We have 6 times 2, that's 12. Our secondaries have a 3-kilometer firing range. Oof. In tier 4, where they discovered that you could point your guns up. Yeah, for anti-aircraft. Up. 3. Our anti-aircraft defense is 3. That's horrific. It's 3 because the only anti-aircraft guns we have are these tiny 8mm guns. Oh no. Yeah, I want to find the rangefinders on this boat. I think these might be them. No, these are them. I'm sorry. So yeah, you notice that these are 2 viewing ports that are spaced as far away as they can reasonably make them. They're uniform. There should be one at the front, and then one at the back. I'm not sure how to get out of this. And let's see if we can find it. Well, There might not actually be one at the back. That might be a later development. But, yep, I think these are just it. They try to find the highest point of the ship and measure the distance between the difference between this viewport over here and this viewport over here. Well, we don't have our 50% bonus anymore. We might just play the Orion just to get the 50% bonus out of the way. And also because our captain in the Orion is the least experienced person that I have in the game right now. I do not play British battleships. I don't really play battleships that much because they're very slow, and I like destroyers. This destroyer is very fast. Tier 1, or they discovered you could point the guns inward. That's actually true. Tier 1 often features gun decks that are inside the ship that would later become what secondaries are. You can kind of see some of them here. And they took those from early 1800s designs of having the gun deck below the top deck, which made a lot of sense for cannons to protect the powder and shot from weather and rain, and also give a limited amount of protection to the crew manning the guns. Ship's doing some soul searching. Yep. Their guns, you know, eventually they got to go outside on the deck and see the sun, you know. Of course, early 1700s naval ships always had guns on the deck, the top deck, and under. But, you know, was seen as more defensive to protect the gun casing inside. That I don't think turned out to be true, because a lot of what casualties and damages crew inside a naval ship is actually splintering of metal or some, you know, wood in the 1700s and 1800s sense of a shell hitting the belt armor and cracking it and causing splinters or pieces of shrapnel to go all over the inside of the compartment, which can be the ship or can be the tank. If you play War Thunder, they do an excellent job of rendering how, you know, shards of metal basically, you know, turn into a shotgun. It destroys the shell on entering the armor, or it buckles the armor, creating a huge amount of really tiny shrapnel pieces that can, you know, act as kind of a buzzsaw that can go straight through people, cut off their arms, cut off their legs. It's an incredibly gruesome event. Oh, this is very interesting. We don't have close protection at all. We just have ranged protection for the Orion. That's fascinating. HE starts loaded. I'm not sure if that's me. Well, yeah, let's load HE, because we have 5 destroyers on the enemy team. Oh, we got an aircraft. Amazing. And destroyers are often spotted first, so like this Wakeful. I don't like that shot. I think I'm going to go for the Clemson. Any shot that's blocked by an island is harder to land than open ocean. Let's see if we can get any hits on that. I hear that HE is good for British battleships. Oh, a little behind. Yep. Protection. Is that any mechanic? Armor protection. Well, I mean, when you have 305mm guns looking at you, the idea of protection becomes very, very hard to find in the world. Not a lot can stand up to. That's actually one of the more interesting parts of naval warfare, is humans are able to have the greatest mobility and largest, you know, weight of armaments and caliber on boats because of buoyancy. You know, I guess train-guided weaponry can also be very, very heavy, but, you know, that's incredibly difficult to actually use. And a lot of land-based armaments are limited by hit. Got hit by both. Alright, so... Oh, that is not the right button. I used my... Well, actually that is the right button. If you have one fire, it could be very useful for you to simply give a repair so that that fire's damage will be countered by the repair. I try to do it at the end rather than the beginning. We need to focus on shooting some ships here. Oh, looks like this Kaiser, this German battleship is in for a rough time. So because we know that they took some hits with torpedoes, they might be flooding. And now we're going to add a fire to that just in case they use their reload consumable. Oh, it looks like they did wait for their reload consumable and they took out our fire. So now I'm switching to AP because we're getting within 8.8 kilometers. More torpedoes for this Kaiser. This Kaiser's having a bad day. Let's see if we can get up and over that island. Put a lot of weight of shells right into that ship. There we go. That's what we're here for. To just sail right on up to someone. Let's actually flip our ship. I want to go back towards the middle, towards B. What happens if you shoot the buildings on the islands? I don't think anything. I don't think they modeled in like total warfare, civilian destruction. Also, like, I think it's very strange to see the scale of like these, because like battleships are huge. They're absolutely massive. Oh, this is bad. This could be very bad for us. Let's slam on the brakes here and hope that he like overshoots us. Yep, overshoot. Right, speed up again. Alright, we got him. Ah, look at that. Oof. Sad day to be a pilot. Naval aviator. They have very difficult jobs, especially at this time period. You get brought in on war crimes. It's the big circle thing you messed with earlier. The big circle thing is pressing O brings up the AA sector reinforcement, which in this game you can tell which side of your ship to focus on AA. It's kind of a gameplay mechanic thing. It's not very realistic, but it's there. I kind of severely disagree with it because so much of dodging airplanes in this game is them being right over you and switching sides of the ship, and it's very difficult to keep airplanes on one side, so it's only really useful for the first wave of the airplanes coming in, which is when they have the most planes and the most collective health. I tend to turn it off when I'm like brawling with a squadron of airplanes. Let's see if we can get some hits on this one. We got one. Some over penetration. Let's our true prey, the Phoenix. Let's try that one. Finally, we have a modern layout of turrets so that we don't have to switch sides of the ship. So this is kind of appropriate armor angling. You want to be at a very oblique angle to your target. Your target is coming at us, so let's aim under the ship. Gonna strike them mid-decks. We've got poor dispersion on that, but there we go. That's what we want to see. So, hitting a citadel is this game's version of communicating to you how most naval engagements release. Kind of back to Carbon Speed Dating's question earlier, which is when you shoot a ship in the really important parts of the ship, the power structure or the ammunition, that ship will explode from the inside out. And that is traditionally what sinks ships outright. Everything else goes straight through the ship into the water on the other side. Ships are very rarely sunk by like having a bunch of holes in them because the crew is, especially British crews, spend a lot of time with cork and wood and hammers learning how to patch holes in the crew because it's something that humans can do. Humans cannot fight, the reported 200 feet of flames that happen when all of the cordite inside of a ship goes up at once and literally rips the ship in half. This happened to the HMS Hood and a number of different ships in the Battle of Jutland, which is why Jutland is so well studied and so well remembered for fundamentally changing armor designs and the tactics of naval armament, the people designing the shells and the people designing the armor of ships in World War II. Of course, the HMS Hood was a World War I ship that was just tried to upgrade it or update it because it was so expensive and they didn't want to build a new one. So they were just like, put a bunch more armor on it. It also changed the operational doctrine for how the firing and loading mechanisms were arranged inside of ships. And that helped reduce internal explosions a lot by separating the cordite from the ammo and from having the ammo stored in a separate compartment from the firing mechanism and from the turret. Because a shell is most dangerous when it's in your tubes waiting to be fired and then gets hit. Or blowing up the ammunition stored inside of your machine. That's how a lot of tanks were destroyed, actually. Alright, so those were some good penetrations. I'm a little over-angled. I'm going to angle back towards him for my reload. So we have 2.8 seconds to get to the target. Yeah, so these penetrations, the difference between a solid penetration and over-penetration is the arming mechanism for the shell of the battleship is able to be activated by penetrating through the skin, the thin outer skin of the battleship. I don't know if I should risk over-angling again. Yeah, well, we might as well now. We already took the shots. And he's a really juicy target for us. Oh, that was terrible dispersion. It was horrible. That was good. Oh, if you aim too low, hit the water. Not a good day. I'm gonna use my repair. We are close enough to finally do secondaries. Our secondaries are popping off, trying to pepper the enemy hull and set some fires. Yeah, we are angled successfully for that. So if any shells do hit us, they hit severely angled armor. I don't know whether to follow this Nassau to the right or to the left. The left might help us a lot. I think the right might help us a lot by protecting us from this Bogatar and this Nikolai over here. Although I do want to kill the Bogatar. The Bogatar is coming right at us. It might be very good for us. Yeah, let's do that. Let's kill the Bogatar. That's our job anyway as a battleship, is to kill enemy cruisers. That's what we're designed for. Aim at the waterline, because that's where the Citadel is. The Citadel usually refers to either the steam engine turbine room, which is the engines of the ship, or a small column. Yeah, there we go, we got a Citadel. A small column right under the turrets that spin to help the turrets spin. Oh, and we're getting attacked by this Langley. Luckily, our anti-aircraft is in the right direction. It's getting close, and we have nothing close, so we can't attack it when it's too close to us. Let's take off. Alright, let's continue our attack on the Bogatar. It's turning away from us smartly. Alright, let's see if we can catch it in its turn. Alright, we got two. Not terribly much. We're still successfully angling against the Nikolai. Heavy damage. And a fire. Oh, I don't want that fire. Usually try not to prefer single fires, but I'm being a little bit greedy right now. mostly because I feel like I'm in a pretty safe place from fire, and that was the last attack that aircraft wave had. We aimed a little bit up. There we go. 3 over penetration. Sorry, to finish my statement, before I got distracted about the arming fuses on shells from the Battle of Jutland is when you penetrate the thin outer skin, it starts the arming fuse on the shell. The arming fuse waits until it gets where an important part of the ship would be, that's usually more heavily armored, and then it explodes. That usually takes about 0.3 seconds. So depending on how fast the shell is, or how thin the ship is, this often happens for destroyers, you can have a shell that hits the ship, makes contact with the outside. The arming fuse says, oh, it's time to arm. I love arming. I'm going to arm for 0.4 seconds. And then by the time 0.4 seconds is over, because it's a destroyer, it's already in the water, and then explodes in the water on the other side of the ship. Now that can be valuable, especially against thinly armored or thinly skinned destroyers, in the sense that it'll cause rupture damages and trigger the water hammer effect, which destroyed many World War II era submarines. But, it's not really what you want out of the shell. So that's why switching between armor piercing or high explosive shells is so important, depending on which target you're fighting. For example, we have a destroyer left and an aircraft carrier. This aircraft carrier is trying to kill me a lot. In 15 seconds I'll be able to repair. So I'm going to switch to HE because they explode on contact with the surface. They have significant damage dealing potential, a high probability to cause fires or incapacitate modules. So that's really what will sink a destroyer, is hitting. And we have no capture points, so we might have lost actually already, just due to capture points. And the fact that their aircraft carrier is so good at targeting me. Oh well. I think I'm going to try to dodge this Langley as best I can. Gonna give myself an angle. Hopefully I'll miss over the back of the ship. Oh wow. He's anticipating me turning a little bit more. Don't want to hit this island because then I'll become completely stationary. And we did. Rough. Pulling a Nazi. Flipping it into reverse. And this is probably going to hurt us a lot. Yep. And it started to fire. And now I regret not purchasing the expensive damage control party, which would have really helped me out here. And that's how this game is monetized, by making some of the important things in the game worth money. Again, killed by airplanes. The story of World War II. We did a good performance though. We got 2 hits to the Citadel, 3 destroyed units. And only 2 airplane kills. Well, alright. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into shell design and armor design. Let's take a look at one of the design philosophies. So we can click this button called Show Armor Layout. This is a very good button that I'm glad that World of Warships put in. You can subtract or add certain ones. So this is a 4 and deck plating, 16 millimeters. This is one of the thinner parts, the superstructure is 10, 10. If you hit this, the shell, an AP shell, an armor piercing shell will just go straight through. This is 290. there's a very big difference in the thickness of the armor. Armor design is usually, if it's highly angled, you can afford to put less on it because the bounce angle that it's going to be coming in at will, increase the effective thickness of the armor. Quickie Baby has good videos about this on World of Tanks if you want to go and talk to him. But this is what I was talking about the difference between deck armor thickness, which is 40, and belt armor thickness, which is, more than double. Or the true armor belt that's protecting the citadel right here at the waterline, which is 235 millimeters. That's a significant difference. But aft end armor belt, these are all different. This one at the very end is, if you're engaging the ship head on. Well, I guess that's different. Oh, that's a different design philosophy for that the French have. Let's take away this side. Yeah, okay. Athwart ship. I love these naval terms. 180 millimeters, and then under the water, the idea is the water will protect you, so you can afford to go less, have less. Of course, that doesn't help you if the shell is coming in at this direction, this angle, and is plunging fire. Of course, the more angled you get, the more effective thickness you have. So you can really get hurt if you just punch right through this and you find that 70 millimeters into the citadel. These are the different thicknesses and the color of them all. This is one of my favorite screens. This cassinet over here. It's just another way to armor the ship. And so different countries had different, designers with different theories about how best to do this. So a citadel on my battleship looks like this. This, actually. These are my citadels. So underneath is the control room where a lot of the operations are taking place for range finding, the huge amount of power that's needed for the engines. All of that is right here. Later, the commander will move down here in World War II, at the end of World War II. And these, of course, are the barbettes for the loading mechanism for steering, firing the cordite and shell propulsion that's needed to get the shells where we need it to go. So these are, very important. That's why they're really highly armored, is because the Battle of Jutland scared naval designers so bad with internal explosions that they had, at least America, let's see if we can find America. America had a design philosophy of only armoring the important parts of the ship, and then every other part of the ship that's not important, just let the shell pass through. So I have only very light armor on the outside. Of course, this is a much later ship, so even its light armor is more effective and thicker than the World War I battleships. But, yeah. 16, if something does hit you, at least it'll make a small hole and go right through. It won't stick in the ship and explode. And then this deck armor, this casemate, is to protect the citadel right under it. So yeah, these are different design philosophies for shipbuilding and ship armoring systems. Could actually play this. Well, let's stick with working out our lower ones. Our Orion still needs help. So much help. This poor guy. He has no skills. And yet he's in charge of a battleship. We'd hope that wouldn't happen in history, but yeah. Secondary armaments. Look at all these. Forward facing 102 millimeters. Just for reference, the Eagle, their main battery is 139. But because they are our main battery, our guidance systems are linked to these. The direction finder and the range finder are hooked up to directing these, the gun directors. Whereas the Tureen, 3 tiers lower, still French, you know, their secondary armament features 20 of those caliber of guns pointed in different directions all over the ship. And this is the design of many of the early 1900s and late 1800s ships, you know, exactly like this. I can actually show you a few. I think the famous example is the Chester. Well, the Chester has them on the deck. What's the one I'm thinking of? The St. Louis, yeah. So the St. Louis has these, which are 18 of these little side poke-out guns that are just under the deck, and yep, they're just trying to do their jobs through their little windows. I like those guns a lot. Of course, the main ones are on the side, mounted here. It's a very famous World War I design that is used a lot for tanks. I just kind of thought that this was a good idea to give a diagonal direction shooting thing. Of course, what's really a good idea is to have it on the top with full 360-degree fire. I mean, not 360, but you get what I mean. Able to turn all the way around instead of having one angle really, really locked down, but it can't shoot backwards. Yeah, I like that the most about kind of military history and military doctrine, is seeing these ideas come and go and why they work and why they don't work. I think that those are fascinating to me. I'd get as many books on those as I can possibly get my hands on. Alright, so for this map, this is a very famous low tier map. I'm gonna put my sector reinforcement on this side. It's very Miyazaki-esque setup. Reminds me of Howl's Moving Castle. All the different turrets splaying in all different directions. So for this one, I'm gonna give some berth to this island because destroyers like to come up here and just shoot a bunch of torpedoes, because that's exactly what I would do. If I was this destroyer, I would go to this angle and shoot a bunch of torpedoes. It's worse if we're start on this side than on this side because our angle is more severe. But I'm just going to go kind of on the outside, play a mid game, support my Tenru, support my G101. Gosh, I do love those old destroyer designs. They're just so like a floating platform with guns on it. Like, they're barely even the semblance of a ship. Part of me wishes that World of Warships rendered the people manning all these guns. I can see why they don't want to do that, because it would be truly horrific to watch them, especially when they're on fire. But I think it would help the true communication of what's happening and what you're doing. Looks like they're making a huge right push. Of course, that could be because we have no spotting on A. But regardless, if there's no one on A, we'll push straight through A and get to B, or just go into their backline and start harassing their slower battleships. Yeah, looks like we are successful. This G101 is just firing torpedoes preemptively. Okay. Alright. Turn. That's me. That's one of me. It's my twin. And the Charleston. I'd really rather hit the Charleston, as I have the opportunity. I have a higher chance of doing Citadel hits with the Charleston, and every battleship player knows that your true mission is to get Citadels. Get them. You're one of the few people that can get Citadels, so your mission is to get Citadels. Of course, they have to be in range for me to get the rangefinder guidance. Yep. 7 seconds out. Let's put it about here. A little high. Should have aimed lower. The left and right is pretty good though, unless this Charleston is slowing down, which he may be. Oh, one of them hit. Wow, that V-25 is very close to this Charleston. That is an incredibly dangerous position. He's doing the drifting, the Tokyo drift. He's gonna shoot all the torpedoes. Oh, he only has one, and he collided with the Charleston. And he died. That was horrific to watch. He just went straight into the Charleston, but he was so light and small that the Charleston didn't even care. He just slowed down, so I'm adjusting my aim. And we get one solid penetration. There we go. I want to be at the waterline, because that's where... Oh, wow. Let's go a little closer. He seems to be slowing down. Alright, that's a good salvo. A little behind the ship, actually. He's turning in. So I don't want to shoot at his nose. I'm going to wait for him to complete his turn or just commit to staying that direction. Yep, there. This is a better shot for me. Oh, and he was torpedoed. Rough. Difficult day at the office. Under the ship. And more torpedoes. At this level, you know, like, torpedo gameplay is very exciting. It's all very close. It's really that was fun. It's really the heyday of, you know, high survivability, narrow, tiny ships like the G101 going in for high risk, high reward torpedo maneuvers. And it just being up to the gun crew to sink them before they get too close to strike really decisive torpedo shots. Yeah, a lot of what naval combat is about what has the potential to sink the ship, the whole ship. There are many different philosophies of how to achieve that. One is, you know, attack the crew or set fires so that the ship becomes functionally unusable, and reducing it that way through high explosive shells. And the other is the armor-piercing strategy, which is to get to the center of the ship, the part that's really, really, really important, and disable it. And then, if you knock out its engines, you can leave it, ignore it, or harass it until it dies because it has no maneuverability and becomes an incredibly easy target. If the armor is thick enough, the fuse will arm. If the armor is not thick enough, the shell will overpenetrate and cause significantly less damage. Yeah, so the high explosive has less maximum damage, but half as much, basically. Alright, so we have 2 points to their 0. We could just, defend the points we already have, wait them out. So one thing to note is every time I turn the rudder, the ship goes less fast. Different ships have different behaviors in that regard as to how much their rudder shift actually hurts the speed. I could take a shot at this terrain that's bow on to me, or I could wait for the St. Louis. I'd rather wait for the St. Louis that's coming in at me, just in case I get lucky. Let's try to make a good shot here. It's coming at me, so it's really difficult to gauge. Let's try this. A little behind the ship. Really wanted more over here. Okay. It's coming ever so slightly at me. Oh, that one's a little in front. Well, I did hit it. Of course, we get that over-penetration because it's a part of the ship that's not very highly armored. So a lot of what battleshipping is, sniping. It's really getting into the mechanics of the aim, the artillery ballistics as an art form, and a science. I think it's mostly a science at this point. Certainly at this time period, Oh, that's good. That's a good bunch of hits right there. Yeah, the St. Louis is one of the most dangerous ships in the game because it has fast-firing 127mm, I believe, guns, and a lot of them. You can see on the mini-map which direction it's turning. Those torpedoes might hit. At least one of them. Oh, no. Oh. Right at the ship could be a good firing opportunity for me. I'm oftentimes tempted to fire right when they're at the ship, but I've been resisting that urge. Getting real close to St. Louis is something I want to do because I believe that St. Louis does not have torpedoes. And when I'm reloading, I could also just wiggle because of the unique armor, or the unique turret design of these World War I ones. There we go. That's a good hit.
Alerte incendie.
Yeah, let's point our aim at the other side. Oh, those torpedoes are very dangerous for me, Tenryu. Should not be trying to kill me with these torpedoes. There we go. And over penetration. Over penetration scores the victory. Now that we have 2 fires, we can go ahead and put those out. I want to kill this Valkyrie. I want to get my guns rotated to kill this Valkyrie. Because it's going so fast, I aim ahead a lot. Ooh, yeah. 2 hits. Very nice.
Problème résolu, chef.
Let's try this Tenryu, actually. This Tenryu is a much better target for us. Now we might lose because of their concentration of force. And he turned away successfully. That is how you frustrate battleship captains. Turn away from them very suddenly.
torpilles droit devant. Et à midi.
Japanese cruisers
Alerte incendie.
armored with bamboo. Only overpenetrate them. I'm gonna send those shells. It looks like we're outnumbered, on fire. Doesn't look good. We need to find a citadel here. And we got a ricochet. Oof. Take out this Valkyrie with a few overpenetrations, actually. Okay, focus. Focus on the low health targets. Like the Tenryu. Potentially help ourselves out. Ugh. Terrible. Oh, this is not looking good. Justin does not appear to be moving. Interested in moving. Okay. Only got the most kills on the team. We're tied for the most kills. No citadels though. Can't decide if that performance was better or worse for us. Got 28 hits. I feel like we had decent shots. Ah, Twitch drops. Enable Twitch drops. Lets people earn World of Warships loot while watching your stream. I'm not sure what that is. How can I do this? Okay, well, I'll research that potentially afterwards. Connect your Twitch account with your Warm Gaming account. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Still have yet to get a victory. Ugh. Okay. I guess the mark of a balanced game is a 50-50 win streak. Might do this actually. Walking around with an unupgraded Orion in the current meta of carrier gameplay is not a very good idea. 7 knots of maneuverability, that's very nice. Sure, that's worth it. Okay. So getting a better engine. From 19 knots to 22. Still slow, but at least it's better. It'll draw in a lot of viewers. Okay. I might actually take a break and do that then. Alright, so we're gonna call it there. And yeah, I should be able to set up some of these linking things, and we'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in.